the whole thing was shadowing us, right behind us, right on the side of us. You could kind of see the thing moving through the woods.
All I can remember is flipping the light on, and I see this creature, and I knew in my heart, I knew in my mind, and the whole night, this isn't a man.
And then this thing walks across the road, takes a turn towards us, and then leaps over a guardrail.
Went to look forward, and there was a big black thing.
Welcome to Squatch-D TV, exploring the Bigfoot mystery each week with your hosts, veteran researcher, author, and TV personality, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, and from the Bigfoot Research Project of Kentucky, Chris Bennett. Sit back and buckle up as we bring you guests from around North America discussing the Bigfoot phenomena, but not without a few laughs too. Here are your hosts, Steve and Chris.
And good evening, cyberspace. Welcome to a delayed Squatch-D TV for today's date, January 30th, 2022. I'm your host, your guide, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls. Well, my co-host is out sick today, so we have a special treat with us. Tonight, we have our good friend from Western New York Bigfoot Investigation Group, Mr. Joe Snyder. Hello, Joe. Thanks for playing backup tonight.
Well, thank you for asking me, man. It's always fun to be here. Hope Chris gets to feeling better soon.
I know he was a little under the weather last week, so
yeah,
you know, he actually about a couple hours before the show, he said, "Listen, is it okay if I'm feeling horrible?" No, go ahead. You know, you got to take care of yourself.
yeah.
So, Joe, no snow, huh?
Oh, right. Yeah. No, lots of snow.
I feel sorry for our brethren on the Northeast coast in New England. They are definitely
they're getting dumped on. Yeah.
They got hammered in the wind and horrible. But we have a heck of a show lined up for you tonight. I'll get into it more in a second, but right now let's do the roll call in the house first tonight. The one, the only Low Rider. Good evening, Low Rider. Second in the house was B. Lynn. B, good to see you. Bigfoot New York Todd is in the house. Lester Taylor. DM Zabo is in the house. Brian 49, welcome. And thank you, Brian. Brian threw in a $9.99 donation. We appreciate that. That helps. Like I said, every bit helps fund this network. Gary Johnson, hello. Gary's saying just being a newbie. Well, welcome. And who else? There's Joe, and there's me, and there's B, and there's Lester again. And Gary Johnson's in the house. Mr. Eyes. Sasquatch. What?
Miss. My eyes.
My eyes. I apologize. My eyes,
It's hard to tell, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But
go ahead. Sorry. Sasquatch Wizards Adirondacks. Arthur is in the house. Arthur, hello. Good afternoon. Good evening. Harry, Nikki's in the house with Harry Man, Hoodwinks, and Hoaxes.
Fun
Jay
stuff.
Fritz, good to see you, Jay. Getting down the line here a bit more. Lance Windsor, hello, Lance. Bigfoot Society, hello, good to see you. John Nick something, Uncle Bones too. Ammon Chris, huzzah. Bob Lemley, he's out there. And
Hello, Bob.
Who else? Nottingham Yankees is in the house. Hello from across the pond. Good to see you. Lockbeard's in the house. Let's see. There's trouble. Jerry's in the house, and Kathy. Hello, Kathy. Good to see you out there if you're watching. Let's see. Who else? Jen. Hello, Jen. Welcome.
Hey, Jen.
Raptor Crazy.
Raptor.
Brian McMahon. Good to see you, Brian, again. And of course, our good friend Aaron. Good to see you. And first of all, I want to wish everybody that hopped on this week and wished me a happy birthday over there on the Facebook. Good God, it took me an hour and a half to say thank you to everybody that wished me, but I tried to get everybody that wished me a happy birthday, and it's really appreciated. It's humbling, and it made my day. So I appreciate every happy birthday wish. So, Joe, you have any news, anything to report on tonight?
No, not really, man. I'm looking forward to this spring.
Well, I would agree with that. So, we have, unfortunately, Chris isn't here to appreciate this, but I know there's some in the chat that will. And,
I think you just muted yourself. No. Nope. Still can't hear you. Oh, no. This is the night for issues. Steve will get it worked out, folks. Well, now you're muted. I can see the mute thing. Now you're still on mute. Yeah. You're still showing muted. Well, hello, folks. I guess it's all on me right now. Boy, talk about being put on a spot. All right, yeah, he's having a little bit of tonight of all nights, man. I was looking forward to this one, especially because of John Green. Donald, tell us how I survived the Edmunds Fitzgerald sinking. Well, wasn't easy, man, but I just washed up on the shore and, yeah, I'm sure Steve will get it all figured out here in a minute or two. Because this is going to be kind of rough for me to hold down Squatch-D TV. I got nothing. I don't have any John Green. I never got to meet John Green. Unfortunately, I would have loved to have met him. But never got to meet him in person. Had his books. I've got one still. I've got the Apes Among Us, of course. But yeah. He sent me a letter one time. I wrote him a letter when I was a kid. I think it might have been about 15 or 16. And I wrote him a letter. I wasn't expecting any answers back, but he actually answered my letter. And I had that in the original book when I had Apes Among Us. I had that letter stuck in that book for years. And I had a basement in our fire, or a basement. I'm not even drinking, folks. I had a fire in my basement. Whew. I think you guys, everybody out there knows that I've already explained. I've got this thing where everything comes into my head all at once, and sometimes it's hard for me to say things the right way. That's one example you just saw, just right there. But yeah, we had a fire in my basement when I lived in Virginia, and it burnt up every single book. Between me and my wife, we had a bunch of books. We had a huge library down there, and that original got burnt up in the fire. So I had to buy a copy, and that's the copy I have now. But yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, I wish Gary could, but he can't drive. He doesn't have a license. Yeah. Or I'd get him to go over and help Steve fix his mic. What else? Either way, you look cool, dude. Well, that's my freak flag, man. I come from the era where one of the biggest sayings was, you let your freak flag fly, man. Just let your freak flag fly. I still hold to that. Let your freak flag fly, whoever you are. Mine happens to be, I'm the man of many looks. You never know how I'm going to look when I come on camera. That's my thing. Do I own a Harley? No, I don't, man. I wish I could. I'll tell you the truth. I've only ridden a motorcycle once in my life, and it was a fiasco, really. It was when I was very young. I hung out with a lot of bikers growing up, in my younger years, but I'd never rode a bike. If I were to ride one, I would love to be able to afford a Harley. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Tell us my favorite Steve Kulls story. I believe that's who you mean by Steve K. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of. I mean, I like a lot of the stuff that he's told me. I mean, and you guys have seen it as well as I have. I mean, so I'm a little worried about going out with him this spring. I'm probably going to get rocks thrown at me because it seems like every time somebody goes out with Steve, it can be a different person. It's like, oh, they get a rock thrown at them in that area that they were in. But actually, I would like to experience that. I would like to experience that out there. Have something happen. Yeah. Gary's mean mugging me? No. Gary wouldn't mean mug me. Gary's cool. Raptor looks like the biker image. I don't know, but yeah, I guess you could go. This is my biker mood. Yeah, all right. Someday I might be the sea captain. Some days I'm the biker. I can be a cowboy. I've never been a cowboy, but I could dress like a cowboy. I've got Western wear. Yeah. I'm like Inspector Clouseau from the Pink Panther, man. I'm like, there are all kinds of different outfits. So my wife always says that I like to wear costumes. That's what she calls them. She says I like to wear costumes. Hi, Sharon. How you doing? I'm trying to hold down the show. This isn't easy. Stepping into Steve Cole's shoes, man. Those are some big shoes to fill. I can't do it. But I'm sure he's going to work it out. We're still alive as far as I can see. And I swear to God, folks that are coming in, this is Squatch-D TV. It's not my, you're not watching New York Sasquatch Live or Squatch Speaks or the other one that I did last Friday. This is Kulls. We are going to be checking out an interview that he did with John Green. I'm really excited about that. I wanted to like kick back and watch it with him, man, because I really admire John Green. I mean, so that's something, and I'm sure he'll get it worked out. I know if I know Steve never gives up, man, until he gets it worked out. So, who has in the chat has any of John Green's books? Joe, am I okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine, Sharon. Thanks for asking. Oh, what? Oh, my eyes says it's okay. Just tell us a behind-the-scenes story of when you went out with Steve's group. Well, so far I've only been fortunate enough to actually go out once. That was when when I got to meet him face to face. I mean, I've known Steve, from an online standpoint for a while, but finally got to meet him in person at the Whitehall last year. So, and then we went out one night after Whitehall, and wasn't anything that really happened, but it was a fun time. It was in an area where was activity in that area in the past, and pretty close to some of the areas where Steve has had activity. So we thought we'd go out and check it out. I mean, I could have heard something that was like a rock clack, but there was a river there, so it could have been a lot of other things. But yeah, but it was fun. It was cool. I mean. And sometimes that's the fun of it, just thinking. And I'm not saying go out there with your brain primed. I'm not saying that at all. But it is fun going out to these places thinking that maybe something might happen. But sometimes if nothing happens, which that happens a lot of times when you go out in areas, even areas that are supposed to be active. Sometimes you go out there, nothing happens. Nothing happens. You don't get any kind of knocks or whistles or nothing. Sometimes happens a lot to me when I go into the area where I had my encounter. I haven't seen hide nor hair of that or heard anything. I've heard one thing and I don't know what it is, and that's why I filed it away, because I can't explain what it is, but that's what happens. So but yeah, has anybody got any of John Green's books? Like I said, I have Apes Among Us. I have to get some other. He's written a couple others too, so I got to get those back. Bigfoot Okanagan, I'm losing my mind. What show is on? It's Steve Kulls, man. He's having some issues with his mic and he's having technical issues. He's trying to get it solved. Folks. Don't panic. I'm trying to hold this down to the, so talking about John Green. And I know, Thomas Steenberg, one of my, favorite guys in the world, man, when it comes to Bigfoot. He knew these guys, he knew John Green, and I'm a little jealous, I think, because I wish I'd have been able to. I mean, I was on the opposite coast, so I didn't really have an opportunity to actually meet these guys. Whereas, some of the guys that are the ones that we all go to now, and Thomas is one of the last ones left. They were on the right side of the continent at the time that was all happening, and I think it's cool that he got to know and work with people like John Green Rennie DeHinden and those guys. Be kind of cool to have known him. I wish I'd have gotten to know Bindernagel too. If I'd have gotten to meet Dr. Bindernagel, that would have been awesome. He was a really nice guy. I watched everything he ever did online. So, Apes Among Us is a cool book. So, if anybody that does not have that book, you should get it if you're that interested in Sasquatch. If you're really interested and you want to see what, if you read that book, it's all about people seeing Sasquatch and different accounts of it, and you see a lot of very similar threads running through all of those encounters. And if I'm correct, I think John only wrote about the ones that he considered, genuine. I think. I don't think he ever, he wouldn't put one. And he was like, no, there's no way. Bigfoot disappeared in a portal. Huh. So Sasquatch heard a knock. Yeah, here, right now, here in New York, depending on where I was, there's a big possibility of you're going to hear trees popping cut in the cold. Uh-oh. Who's got a wrench? B-Lin, get rid of the bot down there. Oh. Yeah, get rid of that bot. But yeah, guys, somebody keep me active here. We got a bot. Get rid of that, please. Whatever that says, I can't even tell. I don't even know what language that is. Oh, off subject. Is that an authentic tour poster of the Doors? Oops, wrong side. Sorry, I'm reversed. As far as I know, yes, it is. As far as I know, I got it in old vintage record shop. Trying to remember where I was. Oh, I think Steve's coming back on. Are you back?
Okay, so I don't know what's going on with this system. I don't know if this is an internet issue or not.
Wow.
Because my Alexas have not worked for like on and off for the last hour.
Oh, wow.
I have internet connection, so I'm not quite sure if they're having an issue too. So I'm not really sure what is checking out. I am going to try one thing and one thing only.
See, now we can't hear you. Okay, so now he's figured out what's going on. So that's cool. B-Lin, for my ideal Sasquatch hunt, where would I go and who's in my group? Well, I got to tell you, man, it's going to be here in New York. And it would probably be ideal. I mean, I'd like to be in the Adirondacks a lot more because I just know that there's more activity there because I believe that there's more of a population in Adirondacks than any other part of New York State. I don't think where I go, I don't know. I have nothing to judge the population size, but I've only seen one, and I haven't seen one since. So ideal spot would be probably some of those places that in the Adirondacks where Steve has been having activity. And, of course, Steve would be in the group. I would probably want to have Mike from Tactical Bigfoot Research along on that. Let's see who else. I would love it if Brent, like from the Tall Ones, would be there. I think I put him in that group, hopefully. You know, a lot of these guys that I know, like Leon, I would love Leon to be able to be in that group, you know. So, I mean, there's a lot of different people. I could name off a lot of different people I would love to have investigate some areas with me here. But yeah, even New York Bigfoot Society with Gary, my buddy Gary Hootenholler. You know, I like to go into the places where they. So yeah, New York. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to go out to some of the places in the Northwest. You know, Pacific Northwest. Be awesome. You know. But my ideal place is here at home because that's my whole thing is investigating sightings, you know, and occurrences of Sasquatch in New York State. So that's my thing. So yeah, Donald Fuller. You're never gonna let me live it down, man. Well, you know, the old sea captain look ain't going away anytime soon, Donald. So you just keep on singing. Hey, the Wreck of the Endless Fitzgerald is a good song. I never learned all the words to it. Never, ever. Because it's such a long song. But, yeah. Yeah, you know, Bigfoot. Leon, Bigfoot Okanagan. Matt, yeah. I would love to have Matt come up from Central Florida, Bigfoot. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Take him to the Adirondacks. Because there's no Bigfoot in Florida. So if he has a chance of seeing one, it's going to be up here. Well, I tease him. I don't know if there's Bigfoot in Florida or not. There could be, I suppose. I mean, they're everywhere else in places. But I go to, you know, places where it's like compared to wherever there's black bear populations, you could possibly have Bigfoot, you know. And I don't know. Maybe a freaking swamp ape is different than a Bigfoot. I have no idea. I can't speak with authority on that, but I like to tease him. There's no Bigfoot in Florida. I tease Pat. There's no Bigfoot in Georgia either. But I think there could be Bigfoot in Georgia. Okay, so now we're back until we get back and we see what Steve comes up with. You and Lester are doing a duet, Donald. Cool. Uh-oh. Nikki's saying Rams for the win. Okay. Uh-oh. Leon has a question. Joe, what is the pic to your left with the dog and you? That's actually my dog, Leon. That's Sally, my dog, in a Starfleet uniform, and that's the Enterprise above her. Yeah. My wife had that painting done for me it was a gift for, I think it was Christmas. Yeah, so that's my dog in a Starfleet uniform. She's a Starfleet captain. Yeah. That was pretty cool. Yeah. I got a certificate out in the kitchen hanging by the door that says I'm a Scottish lord now, you know. we're Lord and Lady Snyder, me and my wife, because we have a little piece of land in Scotland now. So that makes me a laird, aka a lord. Yeah. Because I own a little, I don't know, I think it's 2 foot by 2 foot piece of land in Scotland. Yeah. Yeah. Got that as a gift too. So you can just refer to me as Lord Joseph. There's my nickname. Brent was saying before on Nikki's show, we all need to come up with cool nicknames. I'll be Lord Satch Squatch. Bigfoot moved out of Vermont, Donald. So they've been all over looking. There are none. Maybe they're just good at hiding from you. I don't know. I haven't been to Vermont yet. I have not been. In fact, have I ever been to Vermont? I've been all over the United States, but I haven't been to all of the states. I've been through a lot of them, and I've been to a lot of them to visit, but we're back.
Okay. So I figured out what the problem is. I got a new keyboard to install a soundboard. And for some reason, and it's not supposed to work this way, it worked fine in practice sessions, but I hit one of the macro keys, which will play the sound effect. And for whatever reason, it's just it's shutting everything down.
Oh.
So I have no idea what's going on. So that's twice now I've hit that key and twice it went out. So, but I think we can survive without it. I hope I don't accidentally hit one of the. But if this is the case, if this continues to be the problem, what's going to end up happening is this keyboard's going back, which is a shame because it's all Logitech, and Logitech is supposed to be the best. And, it's really easy to program, and, I can hear it in here, but you can't hear me for whatever reason. It's muting the microphone, but it's not showing me. The funny thing is it's not showing me on StreamYard, my mic is muted. And then all of a sudden I get the message that my devices have been disconnected. So there must be some sort of glitch there. And hopefully I'll have that fixed by next week. If not, the keyboard's going back and it's getting junked.
I got confidence in you. You'll figure it all out, man.
Boy, that is so annoying. And I'm beyond frustrated right now.
Absolutely. I get it.
I'm beyond frustrated. And in the process of this, I seem to have put my hat down and I don't know where it is. So, okay. Let's get into what we were supposed to talk to tonight now that I'm completely off course and a little bit aggravated. But many years ago when I started this show, it was January of 2007, Joe, when I interviewed John Green. And at the time, even then, John Green was a little bit, his voice was a little bit shaky. I noticed, he really had some language trouble every once in a while. Very articulate, still very well spoken. Yeah. But what I ended up doing was taking the most of the interview and remastering it because Blog Talk had terrible audio. And so we remastered the audio a bit, and we took out we edited some of the content. So if there was some delays in him speaking or anything like that, or trying to, have issues formulating, because it would take him a few seconds to. We all get older. It happens. I do that all the time. Man.
It's age.
It's age. So we've made him, I think, sound 20 years younger than he was. So and that was a cool thing.
Yeah.
But for those who don't know, John Green was born in 1927 in Vancouver, British Columbia. He received a master's degree in journalism from Columbia University in New York in 1947. He was married in 1948. He lived in Toronto, Vancouver, and Victoria before moving to the Agassiz, Harrison, British Columbia area, where, he raised his children and published the local newspaper for many years. He settled in 1954 in Agassiz. In 1963, believe it or not, he was elected mayor of the village of Harrison Hot Springs. And while mayor, he was responsible for the construction of the Harrison Lakefront Beach, where he spearheaded the World Championship Sam Sculpture competition for many years. So he had a lot of things outside of the Bigfoot world.
Yeah.
In 1972, he sold the local paper to pursue his Sasquatch research and interest in writing publications. And I would assume by that age, it's time, I'm going to, scale back. Green loved history, and the passion drove him to be a champion of the Kilby Historic Site by founding the Kilby Historical Society in 1973. Later, the Fraser Heritage Society was formed, where he continued to donate not only his time but funds to go towards the maintenance of the site. In total, he was a board member for over 40 years. So Mr. Green was honored in 2000 as British Columbia Senior of the Year for his volunteerism in many community groups, including the Chamber of Commerce, Senior Citizens Housing, the Harrison Hot Springs Fire Department, the Boy Scouts, the Search and Rescue Club, and the Lions Club. So a very active member of society, very articulate man, very well spoken. And so,
Well, if you listen to some of the, one of the only ones that's left now with us, Thomas Steenberg, again, I'm always bringing up his name. I'm always dropping his name, it seems like. But it always seems to me to come back to Steenberg, especially when you're talking about this stuff. I think, actually, John Green, he was a journalist, and he wrote a lot of other books, too. And he did with the paper and the news. From what I understand, he originally wasn't even really interested in the Bigfoot thing. He kind of had to be drawn into it. And then eventually he was, when somebody finally convinced him, hey, John, there's something to this, man. And then he was like, yeah, I guess you are. And then he went on from there. But
yeah, you're going to, you will see one of the first questions I ask is, and this was something I did since the beginning, was how did you get into this business?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a ton of audio clips tonight from that interview, and that's a great segue to start how John got started. Check it out. This is part one of the interview.
The term Sasquatch has been around for about 30 years or so by that time, and it's just in British Columbia, although there had been one major article in England and another one all across Canada. A man named J.W. Burns, who was an Indian agent and school teacher at the Indian Reserve near where I now live, writing articles, and during the years when I was growing up, I was aware of this subject, but wasn't doing anything about it. And then I bought the local newspaper in that same area. Again, I knew this was where the stories came from, but I wasn't involved with it at that time. It wasn't until René Dehennen showed up in 1956. He was a recent immigrant from Switzerland, and he talked to a farmer who was working for in Alberta about expeditions to look for the abominable snowman in Nepal, and the fellow told him, well, you don't have to go that far. They have something like that in British Columbia. So he showed up prepared to go looking for the Sasquatch. I tried to talk him out of it. The next year, pretty much as a result of the interest that he had stirred up, because there hadn't been anything going on a year or so. It was 1956. I'd been here since 54. Heard nothing recent about it. But he got the subject discussed again, and the local council in Harrison Hot Springs, which is a very small village, they had some money to spend on a permanent project to mark a provincial centennial, and somebody suggested spending it looking for the Sasquatch. That really was probably the most successful publicity stunt in history, because it never cost anybody a cent. News went all around the world. This little government was going to look for the Sasquatch. And that really got the people around here talking, and I realized that, this started to sound pretty serious, particularly one incident that had taken place just 16 years before and just a few miles away, and there were still people around who witness who saw the thing was still available, and then people who'd seen footprints afterwards. So that's when I really got hooked on it.
So there you go. So, John, I think it was his, his journalistic, not interest, intrigue, or curiosity, that got the best of him, and he started delving into this mystery.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of funny how it was pretty funny. I tried to talk him out of it. Trying to talk to Rennie DeHinden. He called him Rennie DeHinden. Some people call him Renee, but he called him Rennie.
Yeah. I think that's how Thomas pronounces it too, is Rennie. Yep. You got a bot in chat.
I think did I get rid of one? Yeah, I got rid of one.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, the Russian. Right. Yep, got rid of the Russian.
Yeah. Boom. Damn Russians. Always trying to get in on our shows.
That's it.
Trying to learn what we know about Bigfoot, if anything.
So anyhow, that's part one of that. So it was interesting that it wasn't just something that spontaneously happened. It took time. It did. So, so next we talked to him a little bit about Jerry Crew and the first Bigfoot sighting. Of course, that's going to eventually segue into Ray Wallace. But first, let's talk about Jerry Crew. Here it is.
Cool.
There was a story in the city paper up here, showed a picture of Jerry holding a footprint cast. And by that time, I was sufficiently interested that my wife and I just got in the car and headed down there to see what it was all about. Rennie couldn't go because he was a landed immigrant, and at that time he couldn't go to the United States till he got his citizenship. But he was a machine operator. There's always this concept that Jerry Crew found the track, but it wasn't that way at all. I mean, there was a whole contract going on there, and lots of people saw the track. Jerry's role was that he was the man who made a cast of one. Well, when I went down there the first time, there weren't any good tracks to be seen. There were just some old ones beside the road. But on that trip, I got to know Bob Titmus, who was a taxidermist, and had a friend of Jerry Crew's had showed him how to make a cast and so on. And anyway, Bob wrote me a letter a couple of weeks later and said that he and another man named Ed Patrick, who I was just talking to the other day, lives in Alaska, found different tracks of a different individual, and not on the road, but down in a sandbar on the creek bed down below the road. So I went back down again, and that's the time that those are the best tracks I ever saw. The most convincing, because, I could walk around them and hardly leave a boot print, and these things were, as I say, in the deepest part, sunk in an inch deep. That's really what has been my quest ever since, is to try to establish what can make those tracks. We didn't limit it to an animal by any means. We tried any way at all, trying to figure out how they could be made. That's what's kept me going, is that those tracks do exist, and nobody has come up with any explanation of how they were made other than by this huge, heavy animal that people claim that they see.
There you have it.
Yeah, that was a very young John Green on the right there.
Sure was.
In that picture.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, what I find interesting is it's very true that we all think that Jerry Crew found the tracks, but he was the first to cast the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had Carl Crew on the show over a year ago now, talking about his uncle, Uncle Jerry. And, very interesting story how it all happened, and we learned the background of the man. He was very involved with the church, so he was an honest, upright guy.
Mm-hmm.
But then we have the stain of Ray Wallace that comes in, because Ray Wallace had something to do with the property, and of course, many years later, the family found stompers, and of course, the media took great pleasure in saying, "Oh, Bigfoot is dead.
It's over with,"
and that wasn't really quite the case. But John is a simple guy, came from a lot simpler period of time, and he doesn't dance around things. He hits it straight on. And as we hear, we will here's what he has to say about Ray Wallace.
Well, Ray Wallace was was head of the company that had the subcontract that was doing the road building. So he was there some of the time, but he was never there at any time that I was there, and several visits. And a man named Ed Schillinger in Crescent City, California, was a civil engineer, but at that time he was a teenager who was working as the stake setter on that job. He's the only one left that I know of that was actually worked there. And he says that Ray's main role was lining up other jobs, and there was more than one job going at that time, and they didn't see Ray very often. And what is really strange about this situation is that with all this publicity about Ray making all of the tracks, absolutely not one shred of evidence has emerged that Ray ever made any track. All that they have is some wooden footprints, which don't match any known tracks, appear to be carved in imitation, but rather crudely, of a different set of tracks, not the original Bigfoot. Okay, I mean, I'm not saying that he didn't ever fake any tracks, but there are many people that have carved wooden feet, including myself and Grover Krantz, that made them just to try to see whether you could make tracks that way, which in fact you can't. I mean, you can make tracks in very specific pliant materials, but to try to match the actual range of things that the tracks are made in and the strides they make and the way that the toes move around and so on, there's no way in the world you can do it on wooden feet.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing is you notice what he was saying is that, and this is the way those guys back then were thinking, okay, well, if these are real tracks, what could make these tracks? Can we make these tracks? Yep. And so they would try to make, and if, I don't know, I mean, you'll have to put it up to my own opinion, but when I look at the different supposed stompers that Ray Wallace had, and I've seen a couple of different pairs, none of them could have made those casts that they were holding,
Yeah, they look nothing like the Bosberg prints. They look nothing like the Jerry Crew prints. They look nothing like the Patterson Gimlin prints. Mm-hmm. So now,
again, like I said, we know that he did hoax some tracks.
Right. But here's the thing. I think John, there is this big thing about the Blue Creek Mountain tracks that look a lot like Ray Wallace's stompers. And, if you notice John say that, the only reason why they may look like it is because, they were crudely imitated. Right. So maybe John was trying to allude at that particular point that, Ray made those off of the Blue Mountain tracks rather than the other way around.
Could be.
He made the tracks and then made the Blue Creek tracks. Well, it's something that, I was trying to be polite about and not, he at the time, good Lord, he was, in his late 70s, almost 80 at that time. This was, so he was 89 when he passed. Yeah. And this was about 9 years before he passed. So he was about 80 at that time. And I don't believe at the time he was living at home. I think he was in the retirement home at that time.
Okay.
So, but I'm not entirely sure of that when he went into the retirement home. So I didn't really want to, anger him at all about the similarities between the two. And I very well interpreted what he was saying was that, these were crude imitations of tracks that had previously existed. So I don't know.
Well, he was there. So, I mean,
and he didn't even make them, to tell you the truth. A gentleman by the name, I believe, the name of Rant Mullins actually made them.
I've heard that name. Yeah, that's right.
He made them for Ray Wallace. So that's what he had to say about Ray Wallace. One of the more interesting things we talk about, and it was the majority of the program was talked about the Patterson Gimlin film, because here was this third party. It's not Roger Patterson. It's not Bob Gimlin. Here's this third party that was a witness to all these events going around, very closely related to all the witness, related to the witnesses. He knew Roger before the film was ever made. So, he knew that gaggle, Bob Titmus, Roger Patterson.
Yeah, because I think Roger, even before 67, had written, I think, some letters to John Green.
Sure. And he had actually written a book.
Yeah.
Roger had already written a book, America's Abominable Snowman, a couple of years prior to the the actual film. So this is broken up into basically 4 different parts. So we'll go over different parts, 4 different parts, and then he talks about Bob Hieronymus, Philip Morris, and his final word on the film as well. So we have a few clips to get in through this. But his insights into the Patterson-Gimlin film are very interesting. Like, why was Roger Patterson even there?
Yeah.
And he explains that. So here we go.
Cool.
I had gotten to know Roger fairly well before he got the movie. I was called down there in 1967, at the end of August, when there were some new tracks. And at that time, I was trying to arrange to be able to follow tracks with a tracking dog, not the bloodhound type, but, the bloodhound type. Not hunting hounds, but tracking dog. The particular dog at that time was a German Shepherd. I was able to take the dog handler and the dog down there, but those tracks didn't turn out to be very promising. I got a call to come down again right as soon as I got home, and on that occasion there were very good tracks, hundreds of them on a road under construction in the same general area as where the Bigfoot tracks had originated and where Patterson got the movie. So Roger happened to be out investigating somewhere else at the time, but word got to him about those tracks. That's why he was down there at that particular time, and he hadn't planned to be, but he was working on trying to make a movie on this subject, and he was hopeful of being able to see some track. Of course, eventually he saw the thing itself as well as track.
So there you have it. And there was always that big discussion that, at the time, I believe him and Bob Gimlin were up around Mount St. Helens, Jay Birch's area. Investigating, and for whatever reason he got word and he packed up and he went to Bluff Creek, California. Well, that was because of those tracks being found there. And people would say, well, why would a Sasquatch be around a construction site? Well, it's very clear that that these prints came before this film, so, and it wasn't even a necessarily planned thing. So that was some very insightful stuff and some very happenstance stuff. So it doesn't sound like, if there was any, how should I say it, any preconceived or premeditated type of stuff going on. It seems to negate the premeditation by that type of incident.
Yeah, and that's the thing is everybody wants to make it this big, ooh, well, what was he doing in that area? Like, anything that they could, like, it's throwing shade to say it's a hoax. Well, look at it. Look, okay, tracks were found. Roger Patterson wanted to make a movie about Bigfoot, wanted to find a Bigfoot. And so he was a Bigfoot researcher at that time. So, of course, he's going to go to the area if he's like, oh, hey, the tracks were found here. Of course, he's going to go there hoping to see one or at least find some tracks. So it's not a big mystery like everybody wants to throw in there. Oh, what was he doing in there? He was going to make a movie. All that. Well, so what? That doesn't mean that Patty was a hoax and all the footprints were there before any of it, like you said. So it was the footprints that kicked it all off.
Right. Exactly. So that was, very interesting. And I believe Titmus had a lot to do with the tracks prior to Patterson coming down there. So, all right, let's continue on the narration.
Cool.
I wasn't able to get back down there that year. I was there when Roger came home and when the movie was first shown, because, of course, he didn't know what he had. He sent the movie to his brother-in-law to be developed. And when Roger came, I was there before Roger was. Rennie and I were there, and Jim McLaren. We had tracks two sizes of tracks. So the ones that we had seen were roughly 15-inch and 13-inch in length. And of course, we expected when Roger arrived that any cast that he might have would be one or the other of those two, but they weren't. They were in between, almost as long as the 15-inch, but narrower. Well, that added up to 3 different individuals all around there in the same area at the same time. I saw the movie there, and then he showed it again at the University of British Columbia. And then a few months later, Rennie and I made arrangements to show the movie in Canada. So we actually had the original while we were having copies made that we could show. And we had by then prints from the film, which is something nobody else other than Roger had. Roger had not been back to Bluff Creek. He was involved in showing the film in the U.S.
There you have it. So there was 3 different sets of prints found. They all look different. And as Mick points out, that they couldn't have been made by Ray. And there were 3 different size tracks there, and none of them ever matched Ray's fake footprints. So that makes it very interesting because, you know, a lot of times the media loves confusing different things that were said. They try to portray that Wallace was responsible for the Patterson-Gimlin hoax and the tracks that were there, but none of them ever matched any stomper that was ever found by the Wallace family.
Right.
So, you know, but this is, and John will talk about the media in a little bit. And it's very interesting what he has to say. And I've said that for years. I mean, you want to talk about being so in line. Of course, John Green was one of my heroes. So, you know, and I had never talked to him about the media before. So for him to come out and say what I've been saying all along was that, you know, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was always science against Sasquatch research. And then all of a sudden, towards the end of the 80s, towards the 90s, the paradigm shifted. It was the media against Sasquatch research.
Yeah.
And the scientists were trying to say, well, hey, we need to look at this.
Yeah, a few of them were, yeah.
And it's just very, very interesting and a very interesting perspective. And the reason this is so important because we lose that perspective as time goes on. We weren't part of that generation. He was one of the original generations. He was one of the 4 horsemen.
Yeah.
And people want to say that Bob Titmus was probably the 5th horseman.
Right.
You know, and then the next generation was the Tom Steenberg generation.
Yep, my generation too. Yep.
And I came in towards the end of that generation as well, and in the late 90s. So you know, we kind of got a lot of the perspective, but a lot of the folks nowadays that are coming in the 2020s, the late 2010s, don't have this perspective that John Green had, which was really remarkable because he was there at the beginning of all this, and I think he, you know, what he would say now, I have no idea. It'd be very interesting if he was, you know, if he was here and sharp and crisp, and you know, what would John Green say?
I agree.
I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting.
I kind of get a feeling, even though, like I said, I've never got to meet the man. He wrote me a letter once when I was like 15 or 16. He answered a letter that I wrote to him back then.
And that says a lot about him.
Yeah, that he took the time just to answer my letter. It does, yeah. But I think I kind of get the feeling what I think he might say if he were around still and he saw everything that's on the internet now. I think a lot of that, you know, he'd be like, he'd probably be the same thing. It's like the
blowing smoke. That's what he would say.
Blowing
smoke.
Yeah, blowing smoke.
So that was fascinating stuff. So let's listen to part 3 about the Patterson-Gimlin film.
Absolutely.
Following summer, I went down there with slides from the movie, and I met Jim McLaren, who lived down there. Jim was 6'5", and Jim had been to the track site the previous falls, when all the tracks were playing. But by the time I was there, some were still to be seen, but unfortunately the part where the thing is actually in the movie, the tracks were no longer visible. Well, largely I suppose because they'd been cast the year before. Anyway, we did take this companion movie or comparison movie of Jim walking close as he could remember to the route that the creature had taken, and I found that with the slides it was possible to line things up in the viewfinder of my camera to tell exactly where Roger had been when he was taking the movie. So we do have that comparison movie, but it's not by no means perfect. People can argue whether it shows the thing as being bigger than Jim or smaller than Jim.
Oh, there you go. And everybody remembers that initial comparison. But, it's, John was a humble man. And, the comment that he made that, hey, listen, people could argue it,
right.
Whether it's same size or bigger or whatever, because it was, it certainly wasn't like scientific and everything, but, that's what an investigator does. And the funny thing is there was a little discussion on one of the groups today. If Renee was around today, he'd probably say beep 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 beep. I can't hit my beep button on the soundboard, but there was a discussion on one of the boards today about the Cliff Crook photo, and it's amazing how today's generation will say, well, this was taken by a forest ranger, and well, no, it was allegedly taken by a forest ranger. There was no proof that it was ever taken by a forest ranger. That was something that just Cliff Crook had said. And Cliff Crook made the claim that he was one of the first Bigfoot investigators, because he got involved in 1954. But, people, if you look at it, you can see what looks like a blade of grass. And some people other than, and the problem is the only thing that people could reference was what Matt Moneymaker said about that. And of course, because Matt Moneymaker says it doesn't mean, all of a sudden they got to take an opposite stance to that. Let's put personalities aside.
Right.
Let's look at the facts. The fact is that, that's not how can that be a blade of grass and blah, blah. That's just his opinion. Well, then what kind of plant matter is that? Nobody could say, not even, the person that I can't figure out the name right now, but the person on that particular did say that, he had experience with a lot of plant life in the Washington area and was like, no, there's nothing that even fits that description. It's a blade of grass. But they don't look at, everybody's looking at the picture and not the story around it. Okay, so you have a picture that's in question. What's the story around it? Well, with the Patterson-Gimlin film, we always had this very elaborate, very detailed, very timelined kind of list of events.
Yeah.
Around the Cliff Crook photo, that one in particular, you had no story except it was by a game warden. That was it. That's all you got.
Yeah.
There was, the first Bigfoot investigator never went down there and took a picture of the area that it was taken at. He never did any comparison photos, never did any investigation into it, merely took the photo and went, hey, look what I got.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, to me, does not look very well on the credibility of that photo. And that's my point. And then you look at what was Cliff Crook's profession. He was a sculptor.
Right.
And everybody was saying that was a carving put down or a whatever and painted and put down. And then the excuse was, well, if you look at the second photo, because Thinker Thunker, not that he's been right a lot of times as of late, came up with a second photo, which he said kind of proved it wasn't real. And he was, and the guy defending the Cliff Crook picture was like, well, look, it's looking in a completely different way. Well, you can sculpt out another one. I mean, it's no problem.
Right.
Right. And they don't see that ability. You got to look beyond your nose sometimes to figure things out.
Right.
Right. And the fact is that he came out with, I think, 3 or 4 other photos, alleged submissions to him that look all very similar. They have kind of a blurring feature to them, and they look very sculpted or very inanimate, and have that, ability that they could be miniatures too. So who knows? Or they may be something that big. Who knows? But yeah, so you look at the difference between the Patterson Gimlin film and something like a Cliff Crook photo or anything like that. And this is with a film, and you think about it, it's one of the longer films that you see out there. It's not, and you see a series of events, and there's film before the event and after the event. By all means, it passed all the litmus tests for potentially being genuine.
Yeah. And you got to consider the fact that, and maybe I'm biased because I'm that age or close to that age. I mean, of course, some of these guys like John Green, they were before when I was just a little kid, before I even knew what a Bigfoot was. None of those guys that were investigating this back then, and I give them their due for the investigation, because you got to realize, Roger Patterson wanted to make a film. He really believed that there was something out there. Asked me my opinion. He got extremely lucky and actually was able to film one, and one that was more than highly probably making those casts or those footprints that got casted out there. But none of these guys investigating this, none of them want to look like fools. So they're actually trying to do an investigation, trying to find out, is this real? Are these real? Is that real? They're actually looking at it that way. Whereas opposed, things have changed now. I mean, because, there's so much Bigfoot online, Facebook pages, etc. And I think some of them aren't researchers, they're just people that have a Bigfoot page. And so that's why you see all this stuff like the Cook photo and this and that, because everybody's putting up everything that they can. It's not.
Yeah, I know Crook had a website called BigfootCentral.com for a long time. I never, and he may have been. I mean, he was really winding down when I got into the this crazy sideshow here. I never really saw him go out and do anything.
Yeah.
But then again, with YouTube, there wasn't social media, there wasn't YouTube,
Right.
there was none of that then. So he may have been. So
well, these old guys, and that's why I have the due respect. Because these guys didn't have FLIRs. They didn't have,
and there was certainly
technology, but they were out there looking for prints, trying to cast prints, trying to find what evidence they could get,
And even without social media,
right,
they still got pictures out there of them doing their thing.
Yeah.
So why there was nothing of Cliff Crook doing anything except, sitting behind a table here and there, or, making a statement. Cliff Crook also tried to make a claim that the Patterson Gimlin film was a hoax because he could see a buckle in the film.
Oh, okay. I had never heard that before. But.
Yeah. Yeah. So, again, jumping on the let's bash, and that did not necessarily endear him to the Bigfoot community as well.
Yeah.
So, okay, here we are. Patterson Part 4. Here we are.
I should mention that Bob Titmus had also been down there. Roger had only cast 2 tracks. Bob went in there a couple of weeks later and cast 10 more. When we had the movie shown at the university and there were a bunch of scientists there, we showed up with all our what we considered our best casts, and the result was that they said, well, these don't look like genuine tracks. Tracks aren't a perfect shape like that. Bob cast a string of them, some of them showing great deal of motion, great deal of change shape. So those casts are part of the strong evidence supporting that movie. One of those shows the most extreme case of the flexibility in the middle of the foot, where the human foot is rigid, has a rigid arch. The other higher primates can bend their foot in the middle, and there's evidence that the Sasquatch can do the same, even though their footprint looks much more human than it does like any of the apes.
That is very, very correct. And of course, there he's talking about the mid-tarsal break.
Yep.
But that's very interesting to show that Bob Titmus went there afterwards and got more prints.
Right. And
So again, there's another third party that's going in there and getting more tracks.
Yeah.
And you know, so
Bob cast like 9 of them, I believe it was. We just talked a little bit about it on Nikki's show too. I think it was 9 that they said that Bob actually went and casted too.
So it's very, very fascinating stuff that Titmus had been getting captures before and after of castings, and the film in between. So it all makes a lot of sense. And you know, historically, you know, one of the things you got to look at towards the authenticity of any film is, you know, is there history around the area to substantiate, you know, such a claim?
Right.
You know, and obviously there was a lot of tracks being found. There were sightings in the area, of course, I'm sure. And there you have it. So now he talks about, and this I find very interesting, is the way he talks about Bob Hieronymus and Philip Morris. Of course, Bob Hieronymus was the guy who claims he was the guy in the suit.
Well, at least one of them anyway. There's been
Right.
more than one guy though, but yeah.
Very, very true.
Bob is the one everybody thinks of.
Right. And he talks about Philip Morris at length, and very briefly about Greg Long, who was the author of the book that kind of featured everything. So here's John on Bob Hieronymus and company.
As you know, there's a book out of somebody who's been finding everything he ever did wrong in his life. Well, one thing that's certain is Bob Hieronymus was never there. He hasn't got a clue about the geography. The one that is most striking to me is how he totally reversed his story about the suit itself as soon as this costume maker showed up claiming he had made the suit. Described a totally different suit. Hieronymus just abandoned the one that he had described and supported the one that I don't think the costume maker had any more to do with it than Hieronymus did. But actually, in that book, if you'll reread and consider carefully the witnesses who say they saw a suit in Hieronymus's car and what they have to say about it. And there's a clear picture there that the author never even caught on to. He was so fixed on his own idea that Hieronymus did have a suit and was using it to pull pranks in the Yakima area over quite a period. And I presume that people assumed that he must be the guy in the movie and that he never denied it. I mean, you know, why would he? His 15 seconds of fame, so to speak. And probably after these 30-odd years, he made up his mind that the guy who actually was in the suit, because I'm sure he thought it was a man in a suit, wasn't around anymore, so it wouldn't hurt when Long really pushed him. Because remember, at first he told Long he had nothing to do with it. But anyway, what seems quite obvious is that here he's described this horsehide suit, which maybe was the suit he had. But then when somebody else comes along and says he made the suit for Roger, poor old Hieronymus thinks this guy's telling the truth. So, you know, he abandons his own story and hitches on to somebody else. No, there's no resemblance at all. So when he says he saw the movie and said, that's one of my suits, I mean, that's an outright lie. There's no question about that. Actually, all that there is to his story, if the story were true in every detail, is that somebody phoned him and said they were Roger Patterson and bought a suit.
Well, there you have
Thank you very much. And I feel so, I say it almost exactly what John just said, in that is what I've been saying to a lot of people when it comes down to that film about the suits, man. And John said almost the exact same thing that I said and have been saying about the differences in the suits. The one was supposed to be made from greened, what I've read was greened horsehide, was what a Hieronymus originally said. And then Philip Morris made that other costume based from the film, was what I understood. And they made this other costume, and then all of a sudden it switched. Oh yeah, that's the costume.
All right. Well, the big glaring thing is that when Hieronymus first told his story, was he never showed anybody the suit. Only his mother and his nephew were, I believe, at his house, and that was it. But then several months later, he came out and said, well, I showed everybody at the bar, and it was in the back of the car. Yeah. So his story was not necessarily, correct. It changed. And that is a huge issue for an investigator, as is you know, and John being the investigative reporter there, that is quintessential.
Absolutely.
These things are not matching. The suits
Yeah.
are not matching, and the story's changing. Why? You know,
Yeah.
and their little reenactment looked nothing like that. I mean, the loose fitting, you know, legs of that suit.
Yep.
I just did not. You know, it just did not. And again, that suit that they're using was made by, you know, the 2000s standards or by the 1990s standards, not by the standards of 1967 at all.
So I like that, you know, he called him out. So when he said that's one of my suits, and he said that's a plain out lie.
Yep.
There you go, right from a guy that was there during all his time. And he's telling you right now that, nope, that's just an outright lie right there. And, you know, so he knows and tells you that, you know what, Bob Hieronymus was never even at Bluff Creek. Doesn't know the geography, nothing. So.
Yep, it's very interesting stuff. And, of course, the final word on the Patterson-Gimlin film is here.
All right.
I've never had any doubts about that film. I've forgotten most of them now, but year after year, there's people come up with stories supposedly proving it was a hoax. In every case, including this latest one, the story falls apart and the film remains.
There you have it. Very simple. And you're right. People have claimed that, you know, I was this or I was that, and then they eventually fall by the wayside.
Yep.
You know, I just very, very interesting how, you know, what the next 10 years will bring for the film, the Patterson-Gimlin film. Right.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's my point the whole time, man. I mean, the story falls apart, and that's why I will continue to say that that film is of a Sasquatch.
Yep. And, you know, the debunking efforts. Now, you know, I started reading Greg Long's, you know, I've read some of Greg Long's book. And I will say, you know, I don't think he necessarily was out to had an agenda necessarily.
Right.
Except for he heard that it was fake by somebody after he was investigating a UFO sighting.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of piqued his ear, and he started going down the rabbit hole with it. But any good investigative reporter will see that these two stories don't match.
Right.
So is one of them lying or both of them lying? You don't know. It could one be hooked, one hooked up onto the other. Oh, I'm the guy in the suit. And then somebody across the country says, yeah, I made the suit. Next thing you know, oh, okay, yeah. And everything changes. Perfect mixture of a perfect storm, I should say.
Yeah.
That sounds like to me a nor'easter,
yeah, right.
Two convergences. And, so that really, and Greg Long, the book was introduced. The introduction was written by a gentleman by the name of Cal Korff. I don't even remember Cal Korff.
I've never read that book. So
yeah, but Cal Korff was doing a lot of talking on the X Zone Radio, which is like the Canadian version of Coast to Coast AM.
Okay.
Their host is Rob McConnell, and Rob was not a big believer in the Patterson-Gimlin film, much because I believe he started talking a lot to Greg Long, the author of the book. I can't think of the name of the book off the top of my head right now. So I'm not going to sit there and stop the podcast to figure it out. But you'd have Cal Korff on a lot, and Cal Korff would brag, I'm a colonel in the Israeli Secret Services.
Okay.
All right. Well, it turns out that, he's a colonel, all right. But the Israeli Secret Services is not a government agency. It's a security guard company, basically.
Okay.
So he's trying to tout his I'm a colonel.
Yeah.
And as like he's supposed to be something really special and important like that. And there was pictures of him in this beret and this colonel's uniform.
Yeah.
So he's not really in the military, and he had to say, well, I'm not in the military. It's a private company. So you're a security guard.
You're a security guard. You're a rent-a-cop.
Yeah. Maybe you're armed, maybe you're not. I don't know. But
Right. It was really, really
you're still not in the Israeli secret services like it's something special.
Hey, I was a rent-a-cop for a while.
Yeah, because guess what? The Israeli secret services, that's called the Mossad. Anyway.
Right.
Right. So people were all, automatically, but they gave this guy so much credibility, and then he made, he made these wild claims that he assisted in the O.J. Simpson prosecution. Well, that turned out well, didn't it? That's something I would,
don't brag about that.
Don't brag about that. Yeah, drop the O.J. stuff. Yeah, I wouldn't. What was that? When Anchorman, when what's his name said, "I killed a man with a trident." Yeah, I wouldn't go around saying that too loud.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, but this is the post. And the funny thing is years ago I was part of a debate that was supposed to go on about the Patterson-Gimlin film, and Korf was supposed to be on there. And guess what? Korf didn't want to go on live with us to debate us.
Huh.
He wanted his pre-recorded. He would leave after the first hour, and then the rest of us would come on. That to me is very cowardly.
Yeah.
Very cowardly. Because you know what? So let's talk about your background there, Mr. Korf. Are you a colonel, or were you a colonel anointed by some agents, by a government agency? Well, no. Well, why so? So you're no more a colonel than Colonel Sanders. Or what was Elvis's manager? The Colonel, right?
The Colonel. That's right. Hey, I was a captain, so hey.
Yeah, Lowrider says hang on a second, I'll put this one up here for our folks on replay. Colonel Sanders had more credibility.
Yeah. Better chicken too.
That's right. Well, at least Colonel Korf proved he was chicken.
Yeah, right. There you go. He had some chicken.
At least on that debate. So that was fascinating stuff about his take on the Patterson-Gimlin film. Yeah. So he goes on to talk a little bit about, because I had made mention to it.
Yeah.
About, excuse me.
Well, what's fascinating to me at this point is that really top scientists in this field are now taking this matter seriously, and it's as if science was protecting the general public from this heresy for 30 years, but now they're not doing it anymore. Media's taken on that role. What really nailed this down was that the Denver Post, their environment writer, had a major story, front page and spread inside, about top people in the study of apes, like Jane Goodall, who everybody's heard about, and Dara Swindler, who did the textbook on a comparative anatomy of ape and humans, George Schaller, who, although he's not had as much publicity as Jane Goodall, is widely recognized as the most prominent field zoologist of the 20th century and is still going. And all of them saying that it's time this was studied. This story was in the Denver Post and never went anywhere else. And I called the Associated Press in Denver and asked them how come it, or whether they'd ever put it on the wire. No, they hadn't. So I thought maybe that's because it was so big and complex that the guy just didn't want to tackle it. So I phoned the man who wrote the story and asked him if he could do a summary for his Associated Press. He said sure, he'd be glad to do that. And he phoned Associated Press. No, they wouldn't use it. So, they're really manning the ramparts and saying that the public isn't to see this. Very strange.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, what are you going to say about that, right?
Yeah. Of course. And the funny thing is just a year earlier, I had a similar experience where AOL.com had, when they were a thing, of course, back in 2005 and 2006, AOL was still a thing. And they had a news story, ABC, stating that, when they talked about Ray Wallace dying and how they had mixed up Ray Wallace with Roger Patterson, and that they said that Roger had confessed that the whole thing was a fake on his deathbed. They actually said that.
Yeah, that's a lie.
Out and out lie. So I wrote them. I said, you need to retract that. That is completely inconsistent and wrong. Where's your source material for that? Where do you say that? Where is that said anywhere? Well, we'll look into it and get back to you. Of course, they never got back to me, and they never retracted. So that's how lies start, and media just doesn't want to go back and correct it.
Yeah.
So there was a question about the Bigfoot massacre. And, again, MK Davis will tell you that John Green and Bob Titmus and that dog there, they were all part of it.
Yep.
Yeah, they were all part of it. And, I never, when I interviewed John Green at the time, that story had not broken. It was not for another like 3 or 4 months before that broke.
Right.
And it's too bad I never got John after that story broke because
it would be interesting to see what he said about it. Of course,
he would have called it madness, is what he would have called it.
Of course, more than likely, yeah. That was some. That's
Speaking of another person that doesn't like to debate or won't debate the massacre was MK Davis, who somebody reached out when I was going after that a couple of years ago, and said, "Hey, you can come on, we can debate it." And no, I don't want to. Okay.
I think I hate to say this, but because someday it may happen to me. I don't know. It depends on how old I get. My cheese might slide off my cracker, but I mean, and I'm sorry to say, I don't want to. I think MK somewhere's cheese slid off his cracker, man. I think.
And there were
opinion,
okay.
And if
so let's
ever watches this, I'm sorry, dude, but that's what it seems like to me.
Let's make this very clear. Raptor Crazy, there was no bunch of hunters killing Bigfoot where Patterson and Gimlin were researching. The reason being, and I'll tell you this why, it was near a construction area. It's been talked about as part of somebody trying to say, well, what would a Bigfoot be doing around a construction area? To the point where we heard John Green even say that Bob Titmus came down, it was near a construction area, yada, yada, yada. Now, what MK Davis has lovely looped in his little conspiratorial mind is that, that was the construction vehicles were there to bury the Sasquatch bodies and do all this and doing all that. And this is all conjecture. Conjecture, there's no proof of anything. There's no proof. Zero proof.
Yeah.
Just some wild hypothesis based on seeing red on a film that this is a pool of blood. Well, I got news for people, and I got news for MK. When blood dries, it turns black. So that wouldn't be a brown. That wouldn't be a reddish brown pool. That would be a black pool. And the funny thing is, he's using red, the color red, to help make things stand out in the film. So of course that's why it's red. And Thinker Thunker actually corrected that too. And Thinker Thunker is not like I said, he's been wrong before too, but there's things he's been right on as well. Yeah. But definitely, I've never seen anybody say that looks like blood and come up with this whole big, coming up with these whole big conspiracy theory based on nothing but conjecture.
Yeah.
What if?
Just wild.
There's no proof of nothing, just wild conjecture. It's like the Bigfoot taken off of Mount St. Helens when it exploded.
Right.
We didn't get to explore that with Jay Birch, but Jay Birch was a National Guardsman at the time.
Yes.
And he says we had no time to even think about Bigfoot, let alone any of the other animals. The place was like it was. That whole area was nuked, basically.
Yeah, devastated, man. You couldn't even get into the area.
You had the blast zone. You had ashfall. You had pyroclastic flows. The military wasn't worried about Bigfoot. How did they find him anyway? They couldn't find the people that were missing. Or the cars that were missing.
Yeah.
So
you can thank people like how to read email about pressing that Bigfoot massacre thing, shoving that forward.
Yeah.
I mean, two broke cowboys are going down there as an elite crew to kill Bigfoot. That's the funniest shit I've ever heard.
Like there's been so many other Bigfoot killed over the last 80 years.
Right. And how are two broke cowboys with conventional bullets going to kill something that those same people claim are demons and
why would
supernatural Nephilim and all this other crap?
What was the motive behind it? Right, that the whole massacre thing. What was the motive behind it? Because why come out with a film of a Bigfoot when you have the proof in a body?
Yeah.
Why take the harassment from science being called a phony and a fraud and all this other baloney?
Right.
And if you have these bodies, like
if you got the body, you killed it. There you go.
It's all garbage.
Right.
And it's just conjecture from somebody that went to fantasy land. I'm sorry. As an investigator, as a professional investigator, dude, that's grasping at straws. You have no evidence of anything. You don't have evidence of blood.
Yeah.
Is it? You know what? If he was at the site, why didn't he go where the pool was and get some soil samples and then have it tested for blood?
Yeah.
Even though it's been years, you can maybe find it if you dig deep enough.
Well, I've always wondered what is the
but I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what though, Joe. No, what he did with the soil he did dig up is he put it in little bottles and sold it at conferences for a profit.
That's
what he did. That's what he did.
Motive. I was going to say, man, I just can't figure out what the motive is for anybody to actually, make up all this bull crap. I don't know what their motive is for making all that crap up, in the first place. But now you've kind of explained a little bit of it for me.
Well, animals in general, Lockbeard, have a better sense of what's going on because when you have, and understand this, there's a reason for why animals know earthquakes are coming before and probably volcanic eruptions, because when there are earthquakes, it's known that infrasound is emitted during earthquakes or prior to earthquakes, and infrasound is emitted. And we know earthquakes are directly, related to volcanic activity because it causes the earth to rumble. So that may be partly true. Not that they're, better connected with the land, but they may have heard some things that said, "Hey, let's move on."
Yeah. Because dogs and cats can sense an earthquake before it happens. Animals like that. Yeah, of course they do. They live out there. And I think it does have something to do with, that's where you live 24/7. Your instincts and all that are much, much sharper.
Yep, exactly. And you got to think about, there's so many conspiracy theories with zero proof out there. Yeah. Oh, Bigfoot were evacuated off of Mount St. Helens. Yeah. Oh, there was this massacre. No, there was no massacre. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. If there was a massacre, guess what? And they didn't want to bring the bodies forward. Guess what? Would have never been a Patterson Gimlin film.
Right.
And we think just because M.K. Davis, some 40 years later, thinks there's a little bit of red or sees a red pool, when in actuality, he added the red tint to the film and he sees red. And, where's all the rest of this stuff coming from? Where is the evidence? There is zero evidence to even say that happened.
Yeah.
Just like there's zero evidence to say that the military pulled in. So why are we even entertaining this nonsense? Whatever happened, let's find this thing.
Yeah. Whatever happened to, let's just stick to the facts and never stray from the facts.
Blackbears, I was really just messing. Okay. But yes, that sounds legit. Yeah. And I think that's a good pot, is that maybe they can, obviously if a Sasquatch uses infrasound, they may sense that, and other animals do. I know dogs and sheep before earthquakes get very restless. So why? They don't know. Science. That's one of the things science does not know.
Horses too.
Horses.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, we have the last of our John Green clips tonight. Here we are. Hang on. We got to put this one up there. So animals can sense danger. That's why Sasquatch avoid traps baited with my ex-mom's meatloaf. That is certainly for sure, Mick.
Yeah. Boy, that's got to be some bad meatloaf because it gets mentioned often.
Yeah, that's got to be like.
And I love meatloaf, so Mick, don't make me hate meatloaf, man.
So Joe,
yes,
is the missus standing within 25 feet of you?
No.
Is her meatloaf any good?
She doesn't. She likes mine. I usually when
okay.
meatloaf is made in this house, I make it. But she makes a pretty good one too, though.
Okay, yeah, to be fair, I make a pretty mean meatloaf. So, okay, so the final. In the final clip, we're going to ask, basically, John, like I do, I always ask our guests for their final thoughts of the night. And this is what I did with John, and this is what he had said.
Well, for many years I thought you'd have to have the physical part of one. Now that we know what we do about the intermembral index, and now that we have the additional anatomy from the skookum cast, I think if you could get enough scientists to study those things, that would swing it. Well, the thing I generally try to nail down nowadays is that there are two indisputable facts. One is that something makes these enormous footprints, and science cannot tell us what it is. The other fact is that there are thousands of perfectly, not all normal, but a complete range of people, but most of them people whose word would be good on any other subject, who describe getting a good look at an enormous hair-covered upright animal. And that is a fact. That also requires an explanation, and science doesn't have one.
And goodbye.
Well, there you go, man. I could not have said it better.
So he was somebody to admire.
Absolutely.
And the other side, very civic, community-minded guy. Upright fellow, married for many, many years. The same woman.
Yeah.
Raised a family and, did a lot for people. Stuff we never knew until after he passed.
Yeah.
So it just tells you about his humbleness. Kind of humbleness that would write back to a 15-year-old boy about Bigfoot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is something special. So, you could not ask for a better shining example of humanity.
Yeah.
That was, respected and, would always say very, very neutrally almost. I just can't see explaining a mystery with another mystery.
Absolutely.
That was one of his famous quotes on some of the shows he's done.
Yep.
So he is just he was a phenomenal person, phenomenal human being that brought a good amount of honesty to this field.
Mm-hmm.
John Green took over 3,000 reports over his time and put them into a database that was broken down into so many categories that he did so much for research, and we're going to do another episode like this in a few months with a gentleman who's still alive, but he's retired. And that's Henner Wolf Fahrenbach.
Okay.
Who used John Green's statistical studies to see if this thing would plot out like a bell curve, like a living species, or if the plots would be all over the place. And what an interesting guy Dr. Fahrenbach is.
Yeah.
I can't say was, although
Right.
like I said, he's been retired for many years now and off the field.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know why. I don't know why people would. I don't know why he would retire from this. But
Yeah,
I mean, he's got to be up there in age now too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because it's been, you know, like I said, I did this interview with John Green, 2007. So we're talking, 10 years, 19 years ago, maybe. 2022, at least 15.
Yeah.
15 years ago.
Yeah.
15 years ago. So it's just amazing how time flies. And 15 years, that was, a couple of decades ago. And it was nice to bring it back to life.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, some of the honesty needs to come back into the phenomena, man. Really does. That kind of, objectiveness and, because, that's really what we want. I mean, yeah, some of us, out there, not me, but, I'm always going to be, like I say, I'm not out to prove it to the world myself. I'm out to prove it to myself that what I saw was real now, since I've had an encounter that I never expected. Don't think I'll probably ever have one like that again, but we want to get to the bottom of this, man.
Yeah.
I still don't know what it is.
No.
I can describe what I saw, but I still cannot say with any authority what it was. I can just say what it wasn't. It wasn't a bear, and it was not a Homo sapien person like me or you.
And it wasn't a jackalope either.
No, it wasn't a jackalope.
So, Raptor Crazy asked, would I put up the video where I interview John Green? Well, unfortunately, it wasn't a video. This was back in the Blog Talk days. And that was actually Blog Talk at that particular point in time was in its infancy. So it's amazing because what I sounded like on my side asking the questions, I kind of sounded like this, and it sounded really, it was really horrible because you used to do it over the phone.
Yeah.
This was before they even let you use Skype to do it, and then eventually they integrated Skype into Blog Talk Radio. I was just amazed that I could get that audio on John Green's side to kind of crisp up and pop.
Yeah.
And it would be funny because you'd hear John talking like this, and that was always an issue with Blog Talk Radio in the early days was sound quality.
Yeah.
What I ended up doing was taking John Green's audio and then, kind of remastering it, giving it a higher bit rate, being able to digitalize it and put it in stereo. Blog Talk was analog, but here you hear them in stereo now.
Yeah.
And then I had to do a fair amount of, pops, clicks, and hisses removal. And, and not to mention there was a lot of times where, John was up there in age when he did it, and he'd be like, and I had to get rid of some of those too. So it was quite the process to get that video there. And, there was a few exchanges where we were talking back and forth, but the problem is that my audio was so bad that there really wasn't much I could do to peak it, to help it. So
I think you did a good job with this.
But what I am going to do is eventually I will take all these video segments, I will smush them together in with a little bit of narration on my own part, using using my new stuff, and we'll go from there. Yeah. Oh yeah. Among many other issues that goes among other any issues that plague Blog Talk, like dropping phone calls and dropping. Now I got to say tonight the issues were not on Blog Talk. It was this keyboard, and I got to oh, is that another? Yes, another one. Done. So let's see. There we go. So I wish I could do more. I hope the Henner Fahrenbach one goes a little just the same. I think it does, because Fahrenbach, I think, was done a little bit later in 2007, maybe even in 2008. So the sound quality improved over the years with Blog Talk Radio.
Mm-hmm.
So we will see that going forward. But
Cool.
you know, I apologize, folks, for the delay of the show and some of the technical difficulties tonight. But all said and done, we got, we kind of rushed through some of the clips, but we got through the program, and I will be posting probably not this week, but probably next week, the compilation of these clips with some narration, because that's going to take some more time of mine to actually do. Plus, I'm probably going to have a midweek one, and I don't want to I want people to watch this program. Again, I'm sorry that it took a little bit of a delay, but we only, we got on about 10 minutes late, and we chatted for about 20 minutes before we started. I think it was about 9:30 we got on topic, so 9:30, 9:35, somewhere in there. So not too awful, but
yeah, I was sweating it, man. I was like, oh.
No, I had a feeling I knew what the problem was. That's why I did it again the last time. I was like, hang on a second. Do you hear that? No. Yeah. So there is something, and that's something I can talk to the StreamYard folks about. That why is that every time I hit a macro on my keyboard, it's shutting everything down. So a little bit of work for me to do on my end, which is too bad, because I have a soundboard now that I really want to use. So
yeah.
If I fix it, I will. If I can't, I'm getting the money back on the keyboard, because
time to get a plan B.
Yeah, plan B. I'll figure something else out. But anyway, Joe, I want to thank you for filling in for Chris. Chris, we want to wish you the best.
I appreciate it.
Chris, we want to hope you're getting better. So our love and our prayers to you to get a quick, healthy recovery. God, I hope it's not the vid.
Oh, me too.
Geez, he worries me when that happens. So,
yeah.
But anyway, folks, we will be back here next week, 9 p.m. Eastern. Can y'all do me a solid? And that is, on the way out the door, please hit the like button.
That's right.
Like, share, and subscribe. I'm just going to scroll up one more quick time. Almost there. Let's see. Kind of lost some stuff here. Okay, so I lost my comments in the beginning of the show, but I'm going to scroll up here real quick. I lose those too. So, again, I want to thank everybody that's donated to this program. It helps pay for the platform. And so far, we've got the platform paid for about 4 or 5 months already. So we're not doing it for the year. So we're not doing too shabby at all. So, and folks, looking for the books, you should see them anytime now. So,
yeah, I want to get book 2 there of yours.
Yep. So, folks, on behalf of me and Joe, and say goodnight, Joe.
Good night, Joe.
But on behalf of me and for Chris Bennett, we want to wish everybody a healthy, happy, and safe week. Keep warm. It's been nasty weather out there for our New Englanders. If you're not in New England, be thankful that you're not getting hit with this blizzard. But folks, we love you out there. We couldn't do this show without you. And we love every one of you. And we'll catch you all here next week, 9 p.m. Eastern. Squatchdtv.com. Goes right to the channel. We'll see you all here next week.
Hey folks, you've been watching Squatch-D TV. Join us each week, Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for the latest on the Bigfoot mystery. As always, we thank you for being our loyal viewers and encourage all to subscribe to our YouTube page at youtube.com/Steve Kulls. As always, have a great week. Stay safe. God bless. And keep on squatching.